Hi, this is Priyanka Chopra and you're watching Channel Y.
The biggest South Asian media group, Ymedia.
Ymedia Group, established in 2001, is a media company with a 360-degree approach in reaching our audience over 5 platforms: television, radio, newspaper, online news portal, and mobile app.
Midweek Newspaper, the biggest free English newspaper in Canada. From Parliament Hill to Queen's Park, the Ymedia Studios.
How did your meeting go with the Prime Minister of India?
I've sat down and had many conversations with Prime Minister Modi.
Leader of the official opposition.
Great to be with you, Mr. Jaswal. Thanks for having me. You probably have more viewers in GTA than they have in all of Canada.
I think we found pretty strong support.
Next election, we're going to win 5 ridings.
Ymedia at Liberal Convention in Ottawa. Ymedia at Conservative Convention in Quebec City.
It's great to be with you on Ymedia.
Ymedia at Canada First Rally in Ottawa. Ymedia conducts many political one-on-one exclusive interviews. Ymedia is the official media partner with the Toronto International Film Festival.
You are watching TIFF on Ymedia, the official partners.
Ymedia Group is here at Ground Zero at the 2025 Chicago Water Show.
Welcome to Ymedia. We are at the Port of Vancouver.
But you stay tuned with Ymedia.
Channel Y के entertainment for stay tuned with Ymedia special reports.
Reporting from Chandigarh, Channel Y.
Ymedia helps with connecting with the communities, creating brand awareness, and increases sales. Ymedia works with 100+ international brands. Ymedia has also worked with 1,000+ Canadian big and small brands. Ymedia Group, the fastest growing media group in North America.
Ymedia presents Ymedia Political Sensex. Ymedia federal election debates. Who will be the next Prime Minister of Canada? Tough questions. Affordability and housing. Crime and tariffs. Immigration. Tax and innovation, infrastructure, and more. Watch and listen on all Ymedia platforms. Stay tuned. Vote for the country.
Ymedia Group, the fastest growing media group in North America.
Hello everyone, my name is Ymedia Jaswal. I'm the group editor at Ymedia. And we all know the federal elections are going to happen on the 28th of April. And as always, Ymedia is organizing election night debates. And we have, this year, we partnered with the Brampton Board of Trade, a very reputed organizations. And together we're going to organize these debates. I have Vijay with me from Brampton Board of Trade. Vijay, a warm welcome on Ymedia.
Thank you, Ymedia, and thank you to the Ymedia team for collaborating with the Brampton Board of Trade in putting on these debates. These are important exercises in our democracy, and it's important for civic literacy, so thank you so much. So today we are joined by the wonderful Minister Kamal Khera, who is the Liberal candidate for Brampton West, and also in the context of our caretaker government, she is the Minister of Health. So thank you for joining us today. I'd like to also share that we did invite all candidates, and Samira Khan from the Green Party was supposed to come, and unfortunately she is ill. The other candidates, unfortunately, either declined or didn't respond, so we are thankful to Minister Khera for her time. We're also joined by two members of the Brampton Board of Trade community, Frank Gurenser and Jonathan English, who will be posing questions of their own. So I don't want to delay too much, so for the first question, I'll throw it over to Ymedia Jaswal.
Thank you so much. You know, we're discussing about Canada, and you've been a minister most of the time with the Liberal government. What is the vision Canada that you see? We are facing threats from south of border, and these are not the threats we've seen, you know, Crimea being annexed by Russia. Now there are also almost 20% you know, areas of Ukraine under Russia, China, and so many other. This is new world order now. So where do we see Canada from 5 years, 10 years from now? What is the vision of the Liberal Party, and you also as a cabinet minister?
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here to talk about how to build Canada, how to build our Brampton community. First and foremost, I want to say it's been an honor of a lifetime to be my community's voice in Ottawa. Over the years, I've seen firsthand the incredible impact that our government's policies have had on our communities and families in Brampton. You know, and I always say, you know, in order for us to build a stronger Brampton, we need to make smarter investments. And that's precisely what we have seen over the last number of years. You know, whether it is the advocacy that myself and the Brampton MPs have led. We've seen middle-class tax cuts. We have seen $10 a day childcare. We have made sure that the Canada Dental Care Plan that is supporting 9 million Canadians, including 6,000 individuals in Brampton West alone. But I know there's more work that needs to be done, and that's why a Mark Carney-led government will cut taxes even more for 22 million Canadians. We will also increase the guaranteed income supplement for some of the most vulnerable seniors by 5% to offset increases in the cost due to Trump's tariffs. But I want to go talk to your questions around the fact that, look, this is probably the most important election of our lifetime, because Trump isn't just threatening our economy. Trump is actually threatening the very soul of our sovereignty as a nation. And there's only one leader in this political race, and that is Mark Carney. Our Prime Minister, who has a credibility, who has experience, someone who was a governor of the Bank of Canada, who steered us through the 2008 financial crisis, someone who was there after Brexit, when England needed him to be the governor of the Bank of England during that crisis, someone that knows what it takes to stand up to Donald Trump, to build Canada, to build our communities, to diversify our economy, to look at different ways how we do trade around the world, because this election is about ensuring that we protect Canadians first and foremost, to make sure that we're building a Canada that we can all be proud of. And I hope I can earn to the voters in Brampton West, that I can earn your vote and support to be able to continue to do this important work that we have been leading over the last number of years.
Thank you, Minister Khera, and I'll throw it over to Frank to briefly introduce himself and to ask his question.
Minister, thanks for that passionate introduction that's there. I'm Frank Gurenser. I'm the German CEO of Trios College, and I've been actively involved in the career college sector right across Canada on here. My first question is about the housing crisis, okay? We all recognize that we're in one. Housing affordability is an issue, lack of housing. It then ends up often being turned around and blamed on immigration, blamed on international students in a lot of other ways. Yet when I've talked to other developers that are out of here, one of the biggest issues that they have, it takes them 2-3 years to get a program, a development approved, and the costs of $150,000 per door just for the soft charges that are onto here. How would your party work with municipalities like Brampton to develop, to streamline the development approvals and support the infrastructure that we need for new housing?
Thanks for that question. And I think housing affordability is one of the top issues that I will tell you I hear at the doors in our community. So it's very relevant that you have raised this issue. I will also tell you that as a federal government, we have actually been working directly with municipalities. In fact, with our Housing Accelerator Fund, we have been able to directly work with the City of Brampton to ensure that 24,000 houses are being built in our community. I will tell you a lot of them are actually being built in my community of Brampton West. And I will also, with the Mark Carney-led government, and we put forward a very robust and ambitious housing plan that is going to build homes at the pace that we've never seen before, because we need to do that. And I will tell you, federal government in the past has not been in a business of building homes, but we need to, and this moment calls for it. And a Mark Carney-led government will double the pace of construction for more than 500,000 new homes in the next few years. Getting the federal government back into the business of home building with a new organization called Building Canada Homes that will have just one job: to build more homes faster. We're also going to be cutting municipal development charges, which we've heard directly from municipalities. In fact, we've been very fortunate with the leadership that we've seen in our community, very active participant at the FCM that we have been engaging with all the first mayors, talking about what more we can do to get more houses built, to make sure our municipalities have the supports that they need, work directly with provinces and territories. And that's why we're going to be cutting the municipal development charges in half for multi-unit residential housing, while working with provinces and territories to compensate municipalities. We're also going to be providing over $25 million in financing to actually bolster the prefabricated homes that we need to get done. Because, if we're going to be building the homes at a pace that Canada needs, we're going to have to be nimble, we're going to have to be agile, and we're going to have to make sure we have a Canada-made approach that is also going to create good, well-paying jobs in our community. I also want to take a moment just to recognize the fact that when we put forward the Housing Accelerator Fund, that is 4 million homes all around Canada, 24,000 homes building in our community of Brampton. What we have seen from the Conservative government, and particularly Pierre Poilievre, he has said that he's actually going to cut entire funding for the Housing Accelerator Fund, which is just absolutely irresponsible. Talk about the organizations that we've seen in our community. We were just in, I know we'll have an opportunity to talk about transit and infrastructure, but we just a few weeks ago, we announced that federal government will be putting forward and expanding the LRT. The federal government will be supporting the LRT expansion because that's what's needed. And at the same time, we need to make sure transit is being built right next to housing, because a lot of our members in our community are working outside of Brampton. So those houses that are actually built being through the Housing Accelerator Fund are actually, the city has approved that they're going to be built across the LRT expansion line. So this is about being nimble. This is about collaborating with municipalities on the ground, which the federal government has been an active partner in. And we're going to continue to make sure we do this work in partnership to build more homes, affordable homes in our community.
Thank you. Shakira, thank you so much. And as you alluded to, we will be talking a little bit about public transit.
Yes.
But in the meantime, I want to throw it over to our public transit expert in the Peabody community, Jonathan English, for your question.
So I guess, just to introduce myself, I'm a researcher and writer on transportation and infrastructure issues. I'm a fellow at the Marin Institute of Urban Management at New York University. But I guess, we'll get to transit, but I think an issue that is obviously near and dear to your heart is healthcare. And it's also an issue that's near and dear to a lot of Bramptonians. Yes. Brampton, very fast growing city. Brampton Board of Trade knows this more than any place. And one of the things that we hear all the time in Brampton is concern about access to healthcare, yes, right from hospitals down to family doctors. So what are your priorities, especially given your expertise in this area? What are your priorities for Brampton? How will your plan and your party's plan affect Brampton in terms of healthcare?
Thank you for that important question, and I'm glad we're talking about healthcare and that it is a key priority for, I'll tell you one of the reasons why I got into politics. I'm a registered nurse by profession. I've spent a lot of my time during the COVID-19 pandemic, helped out in my own community of Brampton at one of the hardest hit long-term care homes in Peel Manor. So this is something that is extremely near and dear to my heart. And it is a top priority for our government. And I will tell you, particularly for me, I want to make sure that every single Bramptonian and every single Canadian has access to accessible, timely, high-quality healthcare when and where they need it. And one of the things that I want to make sure is that first and foremost, we protect and defend our universal, publicly funded healthcare system. We want to make sure that we're modernizing it to the 21st century and that we are working with provinces and territories to deliver those results faster for Canadians. And in fact, I will tell you, I was part of the team that made sure we made one of the historic investments, $200 billion in health accord with provinces and territories. That is directly tied to results, because in the past what we've heard is we've given money to the provinces and territories who are responsible for the delivery of healthcare, but what we've seen is those dollars not being spent to where communities need. So this is tying results to the funding that we have put forward with clear indicators. So you have, first and foremost, there's a huge shortages of family physicians and primary care health teams, so we need to make sure we're supporting them. So tied to increasing that capacity, proactive and preventative care, making sure we are clearing those backlogs in our emergencies, making sure that we're supporting home care, because we want to make sure in a community like Brampton that there's more home care. There's a huge community with chronic care. You know, our hospitals are made for acute care. But what ends up happening is when there's not enough support in the community, people end up in our merge. Or also making sure that we're supporting our elders in our long-term care homes. This is directly tied to results, and provinces and territories are accountable to Canadians. But one of the other things I want to take a moment just to recognize is the fact that we do work. We've actually put forward $70 million, and one of the things that I'm leading with provinces and territories, as well as the regulator, is actually making it easier to speed up the foreign credential recognition. We have immense talent in our community of Brampton. We need to make sure that talent is out. We need to make sure we fill those gaps that we have seen in our system. And the other aspect is around labor mobility pieces. You know, Mr. Carney always talked about building one economy, not 13s. And right now we have 13 economies. How do we remove those barriers? And one of the things in healthcare is about those labor mobility pieces. You know, if I'm a registered nurse, which I am here in Ontario, I shouldn't have to go through a whole set of accreditation courses to work in BC, Newfoundland, or Yukon. So how do we remove those barriers? In fact, I wrote to all my provincial territorial ministers about this, and there's immense opportunities. I will say, you know, I always say never let a crisis go to a waste. You know, but Trump tariffs that we're seeing, we see a united Canada, and there's immense opportunities for us to protect our publicly funded healthcare system, to work with provinces and territories. I mean, and I can talk I didn't even get a chance to talk about, you know, dental care program that is supporting 9 million Canadians in Canada right now. That's 6,000 members of our community in Brampton West alone that are getting that dental care that they need. You know, I met someone the other day, a senior in our community, that said this is the first time he's gone to the dentist. The first time. And that's about changing preventative care. That's about changing how we support people on the ground. Or the fact that we are moving forward on pharmacare. You know, we have signed 4 agreements with different provinces and territories, hopefully with Ontario after the election, to get diabetes medication free for Canadians, to make sure we have those contraceptives free for women, because that is a fundamental right in Canada. And that's what sets our party, the Liberal Party, apart, because what we have seen is Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives want to bring that Trump-style privatization of healthcare, which I will tell you, I won't let that happen.
Mr. Kara, thank you so much for that answer. You, of course, are the Minister of Health, but you have, before I move on to the other questions, you have occupied a cabinet position before as the Minister of Diversity, Inclusion, and
Persons with Disabilities, yes.
There you go. Now, of course, that was under the previous Liberal leader, the previous Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. Prime Minister Mark Carney has notably shrunk the size of cabinet. Yes. You're operating in a lean cabinet. In that process, we've seen, you know, a exclusion, let's say, of important portfolios like women and gender equality, as an example. What do you say to the voter that is concerned about some of these missing portfolios?
Well, I will tell you what we have done over the last 10 years has been able to put at the forefront issues that have never been talked about. When you talked about when you talk about gender equality and women's issues or status of women, we've actually created this department fundamentally to change the way that the work is happening across government. It's not a responsibility of just a woman in gender equality ministry to work and lead their work on GBA+. You know, I talk about GBA+ because gender-based analysis is fundamental. We've changed the way we do policies because every single policy that goes through cabinet or in our government, it actually needs to look at that gender-based analysis. I will tell you the work that we've been able to lead, particularly in my previous ministry, who my other colleagues are. None of these ministries have disappeared. They're under a broader focused cabinet at a time when you need a focused cabinet to talk about real impact of Donald Trump and the threats to Donald Trump to our economy. But at the same time, I want to talk about the things that I have been able to do. You know, when I was the minister responsible for persons with disabilities, I want to talk about the fact that we have been able to build a social safety net around Canadians, particularly so we can have their backs during unprecedented times, whether it is through middle-class tax cuts, whether it is through childcare agreements, the fact that childcare fees have been cut by 80% in our communities. You know, 9 out of 10 Canadians in my community of Brampton West, I will tell you, one of the youngest ridings in the country, we've seen the impact of that on the ground. The fact that we have dental care plan that is supporting 9 million Canadians, or I want to take a moment to talk about, for the first time ever, we've put forward the Canada Disability Benefit. This is the largest investment that we made in the last budget to support some of the most vulnerable Canadians in our communities. You know, $2,400 that they'll be receiving this year because of the commitments that we made. And the supports for our seniors. You know, I was also the previous Minister of Seniors when we actually increased the old age security pension permanently by 10% for those seniors age 75 plus. When the Harper government wanted to raise the age of retirement to 67, we reversed that. We're always going to have the backs from, you know, young people to businesses to seniors. We need to build a social safety net around Canadians so that we now can invest smartly in the things that matter to build this country up. And that's the vision of Prime Minister Mark Carney, to be able to lead this work in a way where we're supporting Canadians at the same time, never backing away from things that matter that is fundamental to what we are as Canadians.
Thank you, Minister Kara. I'll now throw it back to Ymedia Jaswal.
Yeah, there are many questions, but in the interest of time, you know, I'll still keep it with health, since we have an opportunity to talk with you, and you've been the health minister in Mark Carney's cabinet. You spoke about protecting the healthcare system. I couldn't agree more on that. We've seen the healthcare system in India, and you were talking about US as well, private healthcare. We need to protect the public healthcare here. And just for our viewers' benefit, I'd like to tell you, most of you would already know that the biggest spend in the federal and the provincial budget is healthcare. So 2 questions for you. We haven't seen the reduction in wait times or, you know, the emergency department. There are so many issues with that. What's your vision across Canada, if in case you get re-elected as an MP and in case you get back your portfolio as a health minister? What's your vision for Canada, number one? The second part is locally. Just for full disclosure, I'd like to tell you, I'm also one of the directors at the William Osler Hospital. So we are, this is a great vision by William Osler. The team works great. I've been working with them. So we are trying to build the second hospital for Brampton. So I want you to touch on both these things.
Yes, no, and thank you for so much, because I mean, I can talk about health at length, where I didn't get an opportunity to answer some of the things. To your point around the fact, when we put forward the $200 billion, and that is unprecedented amount of funding that we invested in Canadians, taxpayers' dollars for taxpayers, because we saw a huge gap. I mean, Canada did best in terms of saving lives, but and I will say this because I worked in the long-term care homes. I went and supported our seniors. We did not do well for our seniors. And I think we needed to make sure we're supporting, and that's why when I was the Minister of Seniors, we put forward the long-term care standards right across provinces and territories so they can do that work. But to your point around what the vision is to make sure, first and foremost, that we protect and defend our publicly funded universal healthcare system. When there's immense threats that we have seen, the Trump-style privatization of care that we've seen from Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, there's very fundamental ways that they talk about healthcare. We won't let that happen. So first is to protect it, to defend it. Second is around modernizing it to the way that is ready for the 21st century. You talk about wait times, that is literally what we talked about when we signed those agreements with Ontario. And in fact, and you know this because you sit on the board, is because of those investments we're seeing now, the Peel Memorial, the groundbreaking for that was just a few weeks ago when they talked about that will be an inpatient hospital. But I think what we need to do is, particularly in communities like Brampton West, we need to be building a third hospital, not just a second hospital in Brampton. And as a federal government, we are going to be there every step of the way to work with provinces and territories to deliver those results for our community. At the same time, when there's immense opportunities, as I mentioned, never let a crisis go to a waste. There's, when we have shortages of family doctors that we're seeing, there is immense opportunities because there's so many doctors in the U.S. that can't practice there anymore because their scope has decreased. So there's immense opportunities for us. If you have trained in the U.S., we're going to work to make sure that they can come here, support the work that's happening. We have a university, TMU University, coming to Brampton. How do we increase the residency so more people that live in Brampton, study in Brampton, can stay in Brampton and work and support their communities in Brampton? So it's fundamentally, the vision is around proactive, innovative healthcare to make sure we're also making it easier for physicians to take less burden off them. The amount of time you spend writing notes or administering different things, you can be actually taking care of patients. So it's about waiting, it's about reducing those backlogs, making sure that primary care health teams on the ground have those supports. And it's tied directly to results. We've been very clear with the provinces. In the past, we have seen, dollars going to provinces, but no accountability. We were very focused that provinces need to be accountable to Canadians, and these investments are actually tied to results that the Canadians will see. And I will see it through in my role, hopefully, if electors choose me, so I can continue to do this important work, because this is one of the reasons I got into healthcare. This is the reasons why I got into politics, and I want to make sure we do this incredible work with our communities. And we have immense opportunity with the talent that we have in our community of Brampton, with healthcare workers, nurses, PSWs, physicians who are there every single day. And I want them to know that I'll always have their back, because they are the backbone of our healthcare system.
Thank you so much for your passion and for, again, sharing your time with us today. We'll throw it over to the panel for one more round, and I'll ask Frank.
You talked on the needs of what we're going to have on here, and the great initiatives of pharmacare, which you can't deliver unless you have pharmacy assistants and pharmatechs. Dental care, which needs dental assistants and dental hygienists, all of whom are trained at colleges, public colleges and private colleges that are onto here, many of which are trained as programs designed for international students. Your government has, in my opinion, quite wisely, opened the door in the past and recognized that some of the best choices we could have of new immigrants are people who come in, study for 3 years, or 2 to 3, 4 years, work for 3 years thereafter, have a clean bill of health financially, legally for 5 years, and then want to become permanent residents and become Canadian citizens. That part's great. The issue that we have is it went too far, too fast, okay? And unfortunately, your government's position on here was to slam the door, okay? Way too hard. And the minister of the day acknowledged it as a sledgehammer approach that's out of here. But it's going to result in over 10,000 people being let go from public and private colleges and universities in Canada that's onto here. So there's clearly a role and a value of what we end up doing on here. A different example is, you talked about the need for PSWs and support in the long-term care on it. Career colleges train about 75% of all of the personal support workers. My own school, I've trained 6,000, okay? So some of those could be international as well. So let's flip this back to immigration and post-secondary in particular. Our economy here in Brampton and elsewhere relies heavily on immigration and international students. You've gone too far one way. Where are you going to settle this back so that we have sustainable that also supports us. And if we're going to be building those houses, we need tradespeople, many of which are going to be trained as international students to do those jobs. How do we do those? What's your position? How will the government put international students and immigration back on a steady footing?
Yes. No, and thank you for that question. And I think first, I just want to take a moment to recognize all the colleges, the educators that have been part of this conversation for a long time. And in fact, I will always say Brampton is, we see the best of the best in our communities in Brampton. And I showcase Brampton to the rest of Canada when I'm in Ottawa representing the very people that have been working day in and day out to support our community. And I think each and every day when you talk about new immigrants, whether it is through international students or PRs and others that are coming through, they make our country and they make our Brampton community stronger. In fact, here in Brampton, we see the talent, we see the drive that new immigrants bring to our country, and our city is actually a testament of the power of the strength of our immigration system. But we have to, as to your point around the fact that I think what we need to do is we need to make sure that it's sustainable, that we are responsible when we talk about the number of immigrants that are coming in, that when immigrants are coming in, they're actually being put up to be successful. And I think that is the fundamental part. That's why we need to be responsible so that we can sustain the growth at the same time, that prosperity that we have talked about, so that it doesn't put pressure on, we talked about our healthcare just in general, on our housing, but at the same time, we need those people to be building and be part of those, the very problems that we talked about. That is why we're gonna keep the cap on immigration so that it can be returned to a sustainable rate. That's what the community that I have spoken to have spoken about. We also have a responsibility to ensure that the Canadians and people who immigrate to Canada have those social services that they need to be able to fully thrive in the communities that they're in. And I think not just the federal government, provincial governments, municipalities, including colleges and universities, every single one of us have a role to make sure that we are putting these individuals for success. And that is fundamental that we're taking it, because there are people and there are politicians that use these opportunities to divide Canadians. And I've seen that, unfortunately, in our community of Brampton. It is very easy to say that, leave those people out and bring these people in. That doesn't work. That doesn't work, and that's not who Canada is. And I think when you have, in a moment like that we are in today, with Mr. Donald Trump's threats to our economy, to our sovereignty, we need to be united. We need to make sure that we are one voice, that we're supporting Canadians. That's who we are. I mean, I think all of us around the table, maybe exception for one or two perhaps, are an immigrant story. I came to Canada at a young age. I know the opportunities that this country gave me to be a member of parliament, to be a cabinet minister, that I've never would have had anywhere else in the world. That's the power of this community. That's the power of immigration. That's the power of sustainability and making sure that we're looking at immigrant in a positive way. And we're gonna continue to do that, but we can only do that when we sustain it, that we have that prosperity, and that we're responsible and nimble about the way we look at things. And that's the leadership that Mr. Carney Prime Minister Carney will be taking to make sure we're putting these people up for success and building Canada when we have an immense opportunity to do that now.
I agree with your point on immigration. Okay?
Yes.
I'm also a child of immigrants. My parents were both Hungarian. My mom came to the Hungarian Revolution. Wow. We adopted 2 kids from Guatemala, so I'm a sandwich generation. I have immigrant parents and immigrant kids, okay, that are onto it. And I've built a business from nothing, okay? And we have over 80,000 graduates. This is our 33rd year in business, and things can happen. That immigrant drive from all cultures, okay, who come over here, work really hard to make something happen. And so I appreciate the support.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Minister Kara. And for our final question before we wrap, I'd like to invite Jonathan English.
So, we talked a little bit about transit briefly, and Brampton, on a North America-wide basis, Bramptonians ride transit at a higher rate than pretty much any similar community. Bramptonians have shown that they're willing to use transit service if it exists, if it's useful and viable for them. But as a result of that, we've seen crowding, we've seen really long travel times. It takes a really long time just to get across Brampton, let alone getting to other communities. So one of the biggest things we've seen at the Board of Trade was this announcement of both federal and provincial funding for the extension of the LRT to downtown Brampton underground. But we've seen that the funding is not expected to be dispersed until 2026. So that means that this election will be critical for the future of this project. So one of the things that the Board of Trade is asking to candidates is, will you pledge today that if elected, your party will commit to full funding and continuity of the Main Street tunneled LRT extension into downtown Brampton?
Well, thank you for that question. And I will tell you, I think transit is, I know you're an expert, just as I think I'm passionate about healthcare. I think that's you in transit, and great to hear that question from you. And I can tell you, we talk about Brampton is, and you and I were chatting earlier about Brampton is an anomaly when it comes to transit and our ridership. And we, I will tell you, all 5 members of parliament, and hopefully the 6th one that will be returning back to Ottawa, will continue to make sure that we make this a priority. In fact, as you know very well, just a few weeks ago, the federal Liberal team, alongside my colleague of Housing and Infrastructure, Nate was in town to say that we are bringing LRT to Brampton. And you have a commitment from the federal government to make that happen, to work with the city of Brampton, to work with our provincial governments to make that a reality. I can tell you, we've been speaking about this for as long as I can remember, that we've been having this conversation about Brampton. But I think when, for the first time, you see all the stars are aligning, when you have a municipal government that is willing to work, when you have a provincial government that is willing to work, and federal government is on board to make that happen. Because we also know smart investments, transit is not just about moving people, right? Like, it's about creating those good jobs. It's about building communities. It's about where people can thrive and work. And I think that's the commitment. And in fact, I will tell you, the federal Liberal government has made the largest investments when it comes to transit in our community of Brampton, including in my own community of Brampton West. I remember the first announcement as an MP I made was at a Sandalwood transit facility. We expanded it, we electrified it to make sure we're making those green as investments into our fleet. We made sure there's a 3rd transit that is coming in Brampton East because of the investments that we have made. We made sure that there's funding for a Riverwalk, the flood mitigation, to make sure all the pieces are lining up. And I will tell you, as a federal government, infrastructure is what gets things done, and transit is a way to do that. And you have a commitment from the federal government that we're going to continue to invest in public transit. It's not just a smart decision, it's about creating good jobs so families can thrive, and you have a commitment from the federal government to make that a reality. And we hope to see it through as well, sir, very soon.
Thank you, Minister Kara. And for the edification of the viewer, we have circulated this pledge to all of the candidates that we'll be engaging with today. And we're grateful that Minister Kara supports this pledge and it supports the continuity of additional investments in Brampton's public transit future. Minister Kara, I'd like to invite you to provide some closing remarks.
Thank you. Let me just first and foremost say once again thank you to Brampton Board of Trade and our community leaders as well for being here, for organizing today's debate. I think it's a shame that no other candidate showed up because I fundamentally believe that our democracies work best when everyone is involved, where we can have tough conversations about things that matter to our communities. And I'm very proud to say that I have been to every single Board of Trade debate that has taken place in my last few years as a candidate and as a politician. And I hope to continue to engage with community members because I think these issues matter to Canadians, and it's shameful that I haven't seen the Conservative, the NDP, or any other candidate show up. But as I said earlier, the fact that we are in an economic crisis with Donald Trump and the threats that we are seeing into our country, into Brampton. And we need leadership that actually understands that. We need leadership that has the experience. We need leadership that has the knowledge, not to get us through this crisis, but actually find opportunities to build a stronger Canada. We cannot afford a Conservative government that will cut services that families depend on, like childcare, like middle-class tax cut, like dental care programs. And I think we can all agree that Pierre Poilievre's angry Trump-style politics have no place in Canada. Right now, we need to come together and be as united as possible as Team Canada, not divided like Pierre Poilievre wants us to be. And I think with Mark Carney, We have a real plan, a plan that will make our streets safer, a plan that will bring more investments and growth here in our community of Brampton, a plan that will strengthen seniors' pension, a plan that will strengthen and protect our publicly funded healthcare system, and a plan that will put more money into the pockets of our residents here in our community. So on April 28th, I hope that you will choose to keep Canada strong, that I hope you vote Liberal, and that you, as your candidate in Brampton West, I hope that you will vote for Kamal Khera. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khera, for your time and your insights. I'd like to also thank Ymedia for creating a space for the Brampton business community to ask some of the hard questions to those who are vying to represent us. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ymedia Jaswal.
Thank you so much. At this point, first of all, I'd like to thank the Liberal candidate from Brampton West, Kamal Khera. Thank you so much for joining us today. We call it debate, but I think it was more of a discussion today, and I think I thoroughly enjoyed. We covered quite a few topics, especially healthcare as well. I'd like to thank both our panel members. Thank you so much. Your knowledge on infrastructure and transit is great. Thank you, Jonathan, for that. And sir, your story is amazing. We've had some very good stories about success of the immigrants. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. Brampton Board of Trade, thank you so much for organizing all this. And on behalf of Ymedia, I'd like to thank everyone. These debates will be broadcasted across Canada. You can watch on Rogers 857, Bell 828, and if you're in Alberta or in British Columbia, Telus 2418, and also on Ignite 707. And few brief discussion will also be published in Bidwig newspaper. You can pick your copy. Thank you so much, everyone, and stay tuned with Ymedia. Thank you.
Ymedia Group, the fastest growing media group in North America.